Today, we're going to talk about a powerhouse that completely reshaped the Indian subcontinent, the Maratha Empire. Long before the British established their Raj, it was actually the Marathas who rose up to become the dominant pan-Indian force. And their story? Well, it's an incredible mix of cultural awakening, brilliant military strategy, and truly visionary leadership. To really get the Maratha story, you have to start with their foundation. Literally, their foundation. Forts. Just look at this magnificent structure, Raigad Fort. This wasn't just a building, it was a powerful statement. As Shivaji's own finance minister, Ramachandrapant Amatya, put it, the entire Maratha kingdom was built from forts. They were the anchors of power in that rugged Deccan terrain, the absolute bedrock of the empire to come. So, before we jump into the empire building and the epic battles, we need to ask a fundamental question. Who were the Marathas? What brought them together and set the stage for their incredible rise? Let's peel back the layers and look at their origins. At its very heart, the term Maratha refers to the people from the Deccan Plateau, a region we now know as Maharashtra. And the glue that held them together, their unifying identity, was their language, Marathi. Now, this language wasn't new or anything. It had a super rich literary history that went all the way back to the 12th century. But something happened, something changed, that turned this linguistic group into a real political force. That change was a kind of cultural fire, the Bhakti movement. This was a massive spiritual awakening that swept through the region. It was all about personal devotion, not rigid rituals. And suddenly you had these amazing poet saints composing songs and translating sacred texts into the common language, into Marathi. This made profound ideas accessible to absolutely everyone. It did more than just democratize faith. It forged a powerful, shared cultural identity and a social awareness that was just waiting to find a political voice. And two of the most influential figures in all of this were Sant Ram Das and Sant Tukaram. Now, these weren't just holy men tucked away in some monastery. They were cultural icons. Their songs and their teachings resonated so deeply with the common people. They were spreading messages of social unity and political awareness. And in doing so, they were essentially laying the cultural groundwork for what would become a future kingdom. Okay, so with this really strong cultural foundation now in place, the stage was perfectly set for a political visionary to step in. And that brings us to the central figure of our entire story, Chhatrapati Shivaji, and his radical, game-changing idea of Swarajya. And here he is. Born in 1630, Shivaji was not just another regional chieftain. Not at all. He grew up seeing his homeland torn apart by constant infighting between the Deccan sultanates. And at the incredibly young age of just 16, think about that for a second, 16, he began his mission. He started by capturing and strengthening these neglected old forts around his home turf of Pune, all of it driven by one singular, powerful vision. And that vision was built on a single, incredible concept, Swarajya. Now, the word translates to self-rule, but it meant so much more than just political independence. What Shivaji imagined was a sovereign state that was free in every single sense, politically, economically, and culturally. In an era that was dominated by the massive Mughal Empire and these other sultanates, where power was all feudal and top-down, this idea was profoundly revolutionary. It was a complete game-changer. So the obvious question is, how did a young leader with pretty limited resources manage to take on these massive established empires? Well, the answer wasn't about having a bigger army or more brute force. It was all about brilliant innovation, unbelievable speed, and the constant element of surprise. His whole strategy really rested on three main pillars. First, he totally mastered guerrilla warfare. He used his intimate knowledge of the hills and valleys of the Deccan to outmaneuver and defeat armies that were way larger than his own. Second, he did something truly revolutionary for a land-based power. He built a powerful navy, a full-time military force to protect the Konkan coast and control those vital sea trade routes. And finally, his personal tactics were just so audacious, so daring, that they became the stuff of legend. A perfect example of his tactical genius is this weapon, the Wagnach, or tiger's claw. When the Bijapur Sultanate sent their veteran general Afzal Khan to crush him once and for all, Shivaji agreed to meet him for a parley. He cleverly concealed this weapon in his hand, and in a legendary close-quarters struggle, he defeated the much larger general. It became this powerful symbol of his courage and his cunning. But, maybe nothing showcases his sheer resourcefulness more than his great escape from Agra. After being tricked and imprisoned by the mighty Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb hundreds of miles from his homeland, Shivaji's situation looked absolutely hopeless. But he came up with this ingenious plan. He pretended to be ill and started sending out these huge baskets of sweets as offerings for the poor. After the guards got used to seeing the baskets go in and out, he and his young son hid inside 2 of them and escaped. They traveled for weeks in disguise, right under the nose of the Mughal Empire, all the way back to safety. Aurangzeb would never, ever capture him again. Shivaji's incredible life laid the foundation, but his vision didn't end with him, far from it. So now, let's look at how his kingdom of Suraja was transformed by his successors into a vast pan-Indian empire. Just take a moment to really look at this map. This is the Maratha Empire at its absolute peak in 1759. From a small kingdom tucked away in the Deccan, their influence stretched from Peshawar in the northwest all the way to Bengal in the east. The saffron flag flew over huge swaths of the subcontinent. This wasn't just about conquest. This was the realization of Shivaji's dream on a scale that was probably unimaginable even to him. Now, the journey after Shivaji was, to put it mildly, turbulent. First, there was a grueling 25-year-long war against the full might of Aurangzeb's Mughal army. It tested their resilience to the absolute limit. But, incredibly, they emerged even stronger. By 1754, they actually controlled the Mughal capital of Delhi itself. Then came a catastrophic, disastrous defeat at Panipat in 1761, but remarkably, they bounced back. Their final and greatest rivals were the British, which led to 3 major Anglo-Maratha wars that would ultimately decide the fate of India. So, conquering an empire is one thing, but how in the world do they govern it? Let's take a look at the sophisticated systems that Shivaji and his successors put into place to manage their vast and diverse territories. To govern effectively, Shivaji created this really sophisticated structure called the Ashtapradhan Mandala, which is the Council of 8 Ministers. Think of it like a modern-day cabinet. This wasn't just a random group of advisors. It was a well-defined body with very specific roles, including a prime minister, a finance minister, and a commander-in-chief. This whole system was designed for efficiency and to have really clear lines of authority. And this administration wasn't just about efficiency. It was also about ethics. This quote, from one of Shivaji's own letters to his officials, gives us such a powerful insight into his values as a ruler. He strictly warned against oppressing the common people. He even forbade his soldiers from cutting down fruit trees like mango and jackfruit because he knew they were cherished by the villagers. It just shows a deep, genuine concern for the welfare of his subjects. And this philosophy extended to justice and revenue. Their judicial system, for example, was known for its moderation. Justice was usually delivered by local councils, called panchayats. Their revenue model was especially innovative. From territories outside their direct rule, they collected these taxes called chhat and sardashmuki, and in exchange for that tax, they offered protection from other invaders. It was, in effect, a sophisticated network of tributary states. You know, the Marathas' impact goes so much deeper than battlefields and administrative reforms. Their rise sparked a really significant cultural revival that left a lasting legacy on India. And it's a part of the story that, honestly, often goes untold. A huge part of that legacy was the rise of incredibly powerful women. Here we see Tarabai, who fiercely led the resistance against the Mughals after her husband's death. And then there's Ahilyabai Holkar, a queen renowned not for warfare, but for her incredible wisdom and skill as an administrator. She successfully governed her kingdom for 3 whole decades. I mean, the sheer scale of Ahilyabai Holkar's contribution is just staggering. She's credited with building or restoring hundreds of temples, ghats for bathing, wells, and roads across the entire subcontinent. We're talking from Kedarnath way up in the Himalayas down to Ramaswaram in the south. She famously rebuilt the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi, one of Hinduism's most sacred sites. Her legacy is literally carved in stone all across India. And that brings us full circle, right back to where it all started. This is Shivaji's royal seal. Now, at a time when Persian was the official language of most courts, he deliberately chose to use Sanskrit, and its motto perfectly, beautifully encapsulates his entire philosophy. It declares that his authority, waxing like the new moon and revered by the world, reigns for one single purpose: the welfare of the people. So, let's end with this one thought. The sources make a really crucial point. The British took India from the Marathas. The Marathas were the dominant power in the 18th century, not the fading Mughal Empire. And this leaves us with a fascinating and massive question to ponder. How might the course of Indian, and maybe even world history, be different if the Marathas had actually won their final struggle against the British? What kind of nation would have emerged from that?
It's a powerful reminder of their central, pivotal role in shaping the destiny of the subcontinent.